Introducing the official Werx coffee in 3 bold flavors. Fog Navigator, the master of mornings, chocolate and apricot. Texas Pecan, Lone Star Luxury, pecan and cocoa. House Decaf, full flavor, no buzz, smoky dark chocolate. 3 bold new flavors now available at monkeywerxus.com/shop or scan the QR code on screen now.
All right. Hey, welcome, folks. Mil-Spec Ops Monkey here. It's going to be your SITREP. It's around 11 a.m. Central Time, coming to you live here from the great state of Texas in the Monkey Lounge. And, boy, I tell you what, Mediterranean right now is heating up like a junkie spoon. If there was ever an opportunity for things to go super hot, super quick, it's now. I know we've been watching for a little while, the things going on between Russia and Ukraine. But when you start getting into what we are watching unfold rapidly, and the fact that there's so much anti-Semitism in the world against Israel, this thing has the potential to go very big, very fast. And so we're going to kick it off over here in Skyglass, as always, telling you the best, absolute best tracker in the world when it comes to aircraft data. And so let's jump over here now, and you'll see on my screen I've pretty much just kind of streamlined it to real-time live C-17 data that is currently up. Let me do this. I'm going to turn off that replay so it doesn't lag me on anything. But there is a stream of C-17s coming into the Mediterranean region right now. And I will just say that I haven't seen it like this in the entire time we've been watching since the whole Hamas thing kicked off. But I'm just going to tell you that this right here, if you remember, as we go back into the Great Reset and we talk about the one thing that really, really moves the needle, and that is this forced migration or involuntary migration, okay? Very important to pay attention to, because we've seen it in the past. Whenever the United States pulled out of Syria, we saw a massive, massive push of migrants coming out of that location into Europe and around the world. So when I see the C-17s lining up like we are seeing right now, that tells me that we probably have quite a few coming into the United States via our C-17s, and the rest of Europe as well. So this, if you're not familiar with what I have up on the screen right now, this is basically, it's the Great Reset business model, okay? And they basically use every one of these items that are shown on the screen to forward and move, with their plan, right? That's their execution strategy. So anytime one of these little things pop off, do know that the WEF is working diligently to make great strides during that time. Okay, so involuntary migration, we're going to see a lot of that going on right now, just like we saw with Afghanistan, just like we saw when the U.S. backed out of Syria, just like we see happening down to our southern border. All right, okay, now let's get back over to this side. I just want to show you, this is a C-17 activity. Like I said, this is live. It's real time, headed into Israel. They're about 8 hours ahead of us here in Texas. So it is about 7 p.m. at night, I believe, roughly, give or take an hour. So this, you can see them stacking up. You got Qatar. You have, just a bunch. There are actually, those are Israeli military right there, C-130s. But these right here are U.S. Notice they're coming in and out of Crete. So what they're doing is they're evacuating people into Crete, which is Greece, right? And then they're going to put them on planes and they're going to fly them out, and you're going to start to see. Now, while we're talking about this, let me just show you the C-17 activity over the last 72 hours. And you will notice these are the traces. So this is just basically the flight paths of where they're heading. Notice in and out of Germany, so Frankfurt, Ramstein, down into Crete, Malta, over into Cyprus, and a lot headed into Israel, right? So they are picking people up and they're bringing them into the United States. Don't think it's a coincidence that the United States just about 2 weeks ago just threw in the visa waiver for everybody in Israel to come to the United States. Okay, and that is everybody in Israel. That is including Gaza. That includes the West Bank. That's all of Israel. Okay, that's not good. So now this is the United States. Just notice there's a lot of activity on the ports, both coasts, right? And then some stuff going in and out of Texas and the center of the United States. So up the eastern seaboard like nobody's business. Again, last 3 days. All right. So very, very active, very busy. Okay. All right. Let's do this. I'm going to take these away. We're going to go to just the air refuelers. And I want to just see where we stack up. It looks like 767-200. That's going to be your Pegasus. We've got 9 of those up. And then I'm looking for KC-135s, only 13 of those. Notice the one we do see right over this. This is over Europe, right? We haven't seen them in a while, but notice where it's coming out of. Okay, so this it's feeding out over this area, but it's coming back. So it looks like it looks almost like a broken trace. You just notice it just pops up. All right, but again, Mediterranean. We're going to look at some of the data tied to this as well. It is very, very active and busy. In fact, let's just, while we're talking about it and we're looking at it, check this out. Alongside the USS Gerald Ford, you guys may remember that one was just deployed into the Mediterranean. That is going to be your 6th Fleet. It is now accompanied by cruisers. You got the USS Normandy. You've got destroyers, the Thomas Hunter. I don't know who that is. The USS Ramage and the Carney, as well as the USS Roosevelt. Now, remember, too, that the USS Eisenhower just got deployed into the region. So we have got a boatload of stuff pumping all into the Mediterranean. And then, oh, by the way, U.S. Air Force is augmenting the F-35, F-15, F-16s, and A-10 fighter aircraft squadrons in the region. So this thing, I'm telling you, is about to go hot. And we've got a lot of moving pieces, but we need to stay very cognizant of what's going on because, like I mentioned before, when you start talking about the Middle East, you start talking about the Muslims, and you start talking about 1.6 billion of them on the planet. And so they are everywhere, and we've been bringing them into our country. They've been crossing our borders, and some of them have good intentions, but there are a lot that do not like us. And when it comes down to it, they, we are the infidel, all right? So just don't lose sight of that, okay, folks? All right. So this is, again, Israel. This is going to be on Sky Glass, and we're going to start kind of cracking it down here. So we'll look at our watch list. Starting off here in the United States, do note that there are 24 clouding up the scene here above my head that are survey flights. They are still very active. But along our southern border are a lot of U.S. Border and Customs Patrol. We have a lot of intel aircraft that are up, that CL-30 aircraft type. And then we've got this G2. That is, let me get around a little spin on this and take a closer look. Yeah, that's U.S. missile defense aircraft. Yeah, didn't even have one of those, did we? Yeah, Halo 2. So, and then, of course, we've got our NASA boys up there across kind of Wisconsin, Minnesota area. Notice that you got a Q9 to the southern border or southern side of the Canadian border. All right. And then you'll see there is one of our R-135s, looks to be headed to the East Coast or eastern bound. That's Trump. He is airborne right now. Looks to be kind of headed across Florida. He looks over Tampa or something about right now. And then, of course, we've got Customs and Border Patrol down South Florida as well. So let me bounce this across the drink. And notice you got your German intel balloons up, as always, watching everything going on. That Q4 drone, Forte 10, out over the Black Sea, and it's deep in the Black Sea right now. That's going to also be an intel gatherer right there over the Med. And then the Israeli C-130s that are also, notice they're not over Israel. They are kind of north of Egypt, right? Now we look at the intel side of the house. Just notice this one popping in and out of California, Southern Cal, down towards our border. And then we get up into the middle of the United States. We've been watching LaSalle Aviation very active in the center of the U.S., as well as over Tennessee. Now, given the latest intel about all the things going on around the United States in terms of chatter, I can see why they are doing things all over the United States, actually. Looking for the bad guys. All right, and then this is the normal routes we see running along Belarus up towards Russia. But then notice this. This is over Romania and near Bucharest. Look at that. A sea of intel gathering. What's going on inside that country that has them so concerned? I don't know. But then also notice here we've got a lot of stuff going on over Israel as we have seen in the past. And speaking of that, this is going to be your Israeli Air Force. What are they doing in Belgium? I don't know. But here they are. Look at beating down a path over Israel. Very hot and heavy over Gaza, but over the West Bank, and then up over Lebanon to the north. All right. Again, I don't know what they're doing in Belgium, but let's just get on over here now. Here's our next one. It's going to be your agency boys. Notice they are very active across, all over Southern Europe there, down into Malta, and then into Crete, should I say. And then notice, too, they're near Azerbaijan. What are they doing along that side of the house? I don't know, but it looks like we got some assets out and getting busy. Looking down over southern Africa, see if I had anything. I don't, but that's going to be your Graybirds, right? Those are the Uber folks for our agency boys. Okay. And then stuff over coming out of Cartersville down to the Panhandle. Just notice where they're headed into the Panhandle. That's an area that we see a lot of our covert folks flying in and out of, those D-328s. All right. Now let's take a look at the R-135. Again, this thing has the ability to track an object the size of a soccer ball from 300 miles away. Just notice the path. That's a side-looking aircraft for the most part. Right, so when you see them doing that, they're looking all over Gaza. Again, R-135, little trip over the Mediterranean and then headed back up to where we normally see them. But again, notice it is a little chatter there. I don't know what that was. Maybe just some bad feeds where it was broken traces. But up into Finland, all the way up way north towards Russia. And then we get over here to the United States and notice there is nothing. Now, on Friday, I had one that came down from Lincoln, Nebraska, was headed out over the Gulf. I don't know where we lost sight of it at that point, but where did he go? They wiped the trace. All right, let's talk sub-hunters. This is going to be your mainly Navy P-8 Poseidons. These are, they are sub-hunters, right, for the most part. The E-6, notice the Gulf off the West Coast, so they're looking for stuff out in those general areas. Now, they have the ability to communicate with our fleet, yes. But your E6, Navy E6, the TACAMO is going to be your take charge, move out. That's going to be talking to your ICBM stuff. That'll have launch codes, etc. All right. Now, we didn't look at those. These are just sub-hunters. Just notice the North Sea. You get up here to the Norwegian Sea, kind of around the tip there, headed towards Russia. And then we go back down and just they're kind of scattered everywhere. All right. And then, of course, you've got them out off of Portugal. You got some out over the Mediterranean. And but, over the Med, they're going to be looking for other subs, Russian subs, Iranian subs, whatever it may be, more than likely. And then down over the Persian Gulf area, same thing. They're going to be looking for subs. That's their main mission, right? Okay. All right, let's get back over here to our mini. Let's get into the deeds of what's going on out there. All right, let's go into flight radar. And this is, again, this is live and active out over the Mediterranean. And you can see these lines you see on your screen right here. That's just the sun starting to set, and it's getting a little dark over here. But let me point out the icons that I see on our screen that this one, that's going to be U.S. Reach. That's going to be a C-17, C-17 U.S. Reach. And then I don't know what this one is. It's an NA. Okay, so it's going to be a Spain Air Force C-130. Notice where they're all headed. Over here, right? Look at them stacking up down here on the ground, right? That's a Canadian Air Force, U.S. Air Force, U.S. Air Force. That is French CTM. It's going to be the French. But you can see another one. Look at this Reach coming. I don't know where it's coming out of, but it's over Turkey right now. But there are a sea of C-17s rolling into this region, and not just here, but just all over the area. Okay. So again, pay close attention to it because this could be them pulling people out of the country. I would imagine most of the embassies have been evacuated and sent probably up here to Cyprus, if I had to guess, kind of in this general area, just because it's kind of a neutral zone, so to speak. They can get people here and then they can get them on flights, get them out. But this country, people are vacating because it's about to go really hot really soon, right? Okay, so we looked at the C-17s, just kind of get a lay of the land of what's going on with the relative movement in the area. Let's move on over here to this. We're going to talk flashbang for a minute. It looks like he is leaving the Senior Living Center, headed to Pueblo, Colorado. And he's actually taken a tour of a wind farm, which is one of the biggest jokes on the planet. These things really don't work. I will tell you, when we had the big freeze here in Texas, they froze up. They didn't work. So, yes. All right. But anyway, this is just something I find. This is kind of a little bit of humor for the day, but he's going to remark on Bidenomics. He's owning it, let me tell you. And in the Inflation Reduction Act, which, by the way, it really hasn't gone down. It's gone up. And so he is mobilizing companies to invest in clean energy industries and to create good paying jobs. Yeah. Like I said, I think he lives in he may as well just show up and start talking about moon landings at this point, because he's that far out of touch with reality and clearly hasn't been to the pump in a while. All right. I'm thinking that Jill has not told him he's not running next term, but I don't know. He's kind of stubborn. He may just, try to stay in it. But all right, let's move on before I digress in a major kind of way. Okay, U.S. is picking troops to prepare for potential deployment to the Middle East. Yeah, this is USAG Bavaria at the barracks, but they are basically selecting roughly 2,000 troops, getting ready to send them over to support Israel. So like I said, we watch when you start moving carriers into the region and all of the battle groups and everything else, you can bet that the Middle East is about to go super hot. And we're going to wake up and just go, wow, that was fast. Okay. So the other piece to this is that we've pretty much tapped everything we've got out there in terms of availability in soldiers. Okay. So we are spread so thin that if anything pops off in a major or on multiple fronts, we don't have it. We don't have the depth to go reach back and pull things in. So that means you're going to see a pretty big call up here, and all the way up to age, I think, 55. And then you are going to probably see a draft. It may start out limited draft, but it's going to probably go big because they're not going to get the numbers they need. So pay close attention to that, because I do think that is on the horizon. It's got to be, just given how leaned out our military is right now, and the fact that we don't have the soldiers, and two, we don't have the artillery or anything else we need to actually fight a big war. Okay. All right. Now, the day of rage that was supposed to take place on Friday, obviously it was the quietest day I think we've seen in quite some time. Nothing really popped off around the world. That tells me, when I start talking to my intel community or I talk to my security guys, that made everybody a little bit nervous, because I think what they are thinking is that there was clearly there's something else cooking, and that these guys didn't engage when the call up took place. So definitely don't think, oh, well, that's behind us and everything's good. I would say you probably need to stay on our toes. Definitely stay frosty, because as this thing continues to escalate, it's more than likely going to pop something off. Okay. And this is why we need to be concerned. U.S. Customs confirms the fourth Iranian special interest alien apprehended this month at Eagle Pass. Custom Border Patrol agents see an increase in special interest aliens crossing into the United States at the southern border. Yeah, that's not a shocker. We kind of already knew this was going on. But as I mentioned before, when you start talking about the Iranians, you start talking about Hezbollah, and you start talking about the connectivity between the Mexican cartel and Hezbollah. It's been existing for, well, at least since 2010, we know. And there's a lot of traffic coming and going into the United States because of that connection. Okay. All right. Next piece. Border Patrol arrests thousands of illegals linked to terrorism. That's weird. Yeah. So let's just break it out by the numbers. They're saying more than 2.8 million migrants have had encounters with authorities. That's, just keep in mind, those are encounters. All right. There are a bunch that have just squeaked right through and had no encounters. And that becomes very important because check this out. Of the encounters, the data shows a rise in special interest aliens from Afghanistan. So I guess putting them on C-17s and bringing them straight direct into our country really hasn't changed much. You've got them coming in from Afghanistan, Egypt, Iran, almost 650, a little over 650. Syria, 538. And this one, look at this, Uzbekistan, 12,000, right? And then Turkey, 30,000 coming from Turkey. Pakistan, don't think for a second these guys are friendly. Just because we have a lot of Indian restaurants here in the United States doesn't mean that they are all good. In fact, you'll find out that the Indians and the Pakistanis typically don't get along at a great, they're kind of like the Sunnis and the Shiites, right? They work together when need be, but for the most part, they have a lot of conflict between their countries at the border, okay? And so then, of course, you've got them coming in from Lebanon, Jordan, Iraq, and this country I've never heard of. And look at the number. That's 15,000 of them coming in from that particular country. So notice what we don't see, and that is, that's going to be the countries of Africa, Northern Africa, like the Somalians and things like that. Those are coming in as well. So these are just a rise in this particular special interest aliens from these particular countries. All right. Okay. Moving on. FBI Director Chris Wray. I'm sorry, let me back up. The Gestapo Director Chris Wray says Americans should stay vigilant of increased Hamas threat. Yeah, we already knew that. And so he's talking about the day of jihad that has been called out. But the FBI actually said almost a year ago that within about 6 months they expected something to pop off in the United States. It hasn't happened, although the chatter here in Texas alone is a pretty good indicator that something's about to go in the near future. Okay. All right, let's move on. Right. U.S. sends second aircraft carrier to deter hostile actions against Israel. Yeah, we knew that the USS Ford, we just showed you all of the extra stuff that's going in addition to just the aircraft carrier. But again, the Eisenhower has just been added to that quiver. Keeping in mind that when you start looking at the region, we've got them all around the Middle East already. So they're just maneuvering. But the Mediterranean itself is now starting to get a lot of U.S. Navy assets, right? And those are just the ones we can see. Now, the reason that becomes somewhat of a powder keg is because one, below the surface, there's subs, and there's subs from a lot of different communities there. But the other piece, if you kind of get into the region, let me pop up this as we're kind of getting into the deets. But note that Benghazi, since we bailed out of that country, the Russians took over. All right. So they've got assets and bases stood up there. They've got them in Tripoli. So the Russians are very heavy in Libya. And then, of course, all the way around this side. So you get on this side of the house, you've got a lot of NATO countries, but you get down into Northern Africa side and you start to get quite a few Russian assets. All right. So we're kind of split, but that means the traffic that's coming in and out of here is a mixed bag of tricks, so to speak, right? And so as you come through this area between Greece and Turkey, there's a pinch point that takes place right here in Istanbul. and that feeds into the Black Sea. Well, that's where the Russian assets come and go into this area, which is Crimea. All right. That's a major shipyard and stronghold for the Russians. And oh, by the way, all of their goods, oil, etc., flows right through Istanbul and up into Russia through here via the Black Sea. So when you start to stack up all the different NATO assets, as well as the Russians and the Iranians and everybody else into the Mediterranean, this could really easily pop off, and has an opportunity to do so pretty quickly. Okay, so we were getting into this piece, I think. Yeah, let me back up because I'm getting ahead of myself here. And we talked about this carrier group being sent in, the second aircraft carrier rolling into the region. But let's go over here to this, because this is something we have to pay very close attention to, given the fact that we don't have Trump in office. We've got flashbang in there, and our enemies are licking their chops. Okay, if there was ever an opportunity for some of them to take a shot at the United States because of our weakness, because of our poor policy, because we have basically given everything to Ukraine and compromised our ability to counter any type of an attack. This is on Zero Hedge. U.S. must be ready for simultaneous wars with China, Russia. This is coming from a bipartisan report. So not a good place to be. Again, people are really, from our enemy perspective, looking at the United States as probably the weakest it has ever been in our country's history. And so not a good place to be. And we got about 11 months until, we have any hope, if it even happens. All right. Okay. Israeli strikes on Gaza intensify as humanitarian crisis deepens. Like I said, I was showing the C-17s coming in, and it looks like they are. I would imagine you're going to see them popping into Jordan if Jordan allows them to get across the border, and you'll start to see folks coming out of the West Bank being evacuated, because rumor has it, and I haven't been able to confirm this, but I saw some feed on the fact that the Palestinians are now starting to mobilize to go after things. Now, remember, when you start talking about the West Bank, the occupied West Bank, and the Palestinians, that the United States has just given them a whole bunch of money, hundreds of millions of dollars, and we have given them vehicles. And I don't mean Toyota pickup trucks. I'm talking about hardened vehicles, right, for their security forces. Okay, so you'll probably see those come into play. And then, of course, we've got all this stuff going on down in Gaza, which feeds into Egypt. So when you see the C-17 starting to emerge, you know that they are moving people out in droves to Europe and into the United States. Now, I'm going to show you some more data points here in a minute that indicates that that is actually taking place right now. Okay. All right. Now, here we go. Over here on to the journal. It says Iran helped plot the attack on Israel over several weeks. I've read that this thing has actually been in play for almost 2 years. But it says here that the IRGC gave the final go-ahead last Monday in Beirut. Now, this, as I mentioned in the last SITREP, the dynamics between the Sunnis and the Shiite Muslims, that's a very, very odd dynamic, okay? They don't get along. And so when you hear that Iran is actually giving the green light for Hamas to do something, that is definitely not the norm, okay? They don't, like I said, you start talking about the Shiites from Iran telling the Sunnis in Hamas that they got the green light, then this is strictly, they set aside their differences for this one purpose, and the money probably flowed in again from the United States, freeing up assets to Iran to pay for this stuff, not to mention Palestine. So, okay, and now Israel is actually admitting intelligence mistakes in failing to predict the Hamas attacks. I think we're going to all be scratching our heads for a while trying to figure out how they pulled this off without Israel actually knowing something was going on. We've shown the intel flights. We know that they were looking at things. Only thing I can think of is that they were working underground in tunnels that they didn't have eyes on. I would imagine that Israel is probably looking at some ground penetrating radar now, and I'm sure they already have it. They have to have it. But you may see some additional assets being added, like a Navy P-8 that can actually look at these underground tunnels very easily with the technology on board. Okay, tit for tat escalation on the Israeli-Lebanese border. Okay, so while all of this stuff is happening down at the southern end in Gaza, we are starting to see Hezbollah making pop shots off into Israel as well as Syria. And so get ready. Like I said, Israel could be facing war on 3 fronts very, very quickly. The 4th front would be on the western side, and that's going to be where, the U.S. has all of its assets out in the Mediterranean. So more than likely, they'll get it from the east, which is Palestine, over there in the West Bank, and then you'll see them probably to the north with Hezbollah, and then, of course, Gaza. Now, I want to look at one thing here. Let me see if this is the right. Let me make sure I get the right one. It's important that we note. Okay, I showed you the Israeli Air Force, but let me show you this piece. This is the Canadian Air Force over the West Bank. All right, notice that round circular. They were up for hours flying around, looking at something going on in the West Bank. And I don't know, like I said, it's very odd to see all of these other country air forces coming in to Israel and starting to do some of this legwork like that, for example. This is just something that's, I don't know, I can't explain it, but definitely very, very strange to see these countries come into Israel like the Canadians, like the United States, and starting to run things like R-135 route, tracking and mapping battlefields. All right. Again, over here to ForeFlight, just to give you kind of a lay of the land, what's going on in terms of TFRs and NOTAMs. Just notice this big box over the region. Notice how it stretches out over Jordan, out over Egypt, and all the way up to the north, just shy of Damascus. All right. So that is just kind of tells you the area of operations is kind of expanding beyond just the Israeli borders. All right, but there are all kinds. There's one that actually does match the borders. You can see it running right up the middle of the Dead Sea, all the way down here to the Strip. And by the way, the last count I heard was the Israelis had almost 300,000 IDF troops outside of Gaza getting ready to go in for a ground offensive. Now, there were rumors saying that they were waiting for weather to clear and things like that. I don't know that they worry about weather. I think that was just somebody speculating. One thing I will tell you is that a lot of these troops, the Israeli troops, don't have the full battle rattle because they just weren't prepared. One of the reasons why I say all the time is, if you wait until the event pops off and you try to get your hands on this stuff, you're not going to get it. By the time they actually get their hands on body armor that they need, etc., this thing will be probably well underway. The numbers are going to stack up quickly because they don't have that. Same thing here in the United States. If you don't have full battle rattle going and you haven't planned it out and have gotten your house in order, when it starts to pop off here, you try to order it, you're going to have easily a 6 to 8 week, maybe longer lead time to get that stuff. So that's why it's important to to prepare. Same thing with food. You try and get it when everything's going hot. You're not going to be able to get your hands on it. And the price of what you can get is going to be very expensive. Okay. Again, we go a little bit north to the Black Sea. You can see that is covered up with a lot of mill exercise and ops boxes, as well as just danger boxes. And then notice the Mediterranean starting to really stack up in terms of these boxes. Okay. So pay close attention to that. We'll look at the U.S. briefly. There's not too much new in terms of the United States. One thing I did find very strange is the box that had to do with flashbang over Colorado. We saw it on our last SITREP on Friday is gone, but we know he's traveling now. So I don't know what happened there. I do see some little boxes in the general area like this, for example, but that is exercise and unmanned aircraft schedule stuff. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe let me look at this and see if there's anything out here. No, MILOP area. So just not seeing the regular big, large TFR box, which makes me wonder if he's really going. It is kind of a strange thing because you know he wouldn't go without it, especially given the current situation in the world, right? Okay, let's bug on out. Let's look at Biggs Army Airfield. I want you to pay close attention to this one because remember I said all those C-17s have been stacking up in the Middle East. Well, guess what I'm seeing? I'm seeing it stack up at Biggs Army Airfield. We know there is a large migrant camp there that holds about 15,000. But notice this one here. Now I'm gonna click on the long list of this because it's important to see. When I looked at it this morning, that board was almost completely full on both sides, and it is all civilian aircraft. This is a camper flight coming in directly from Sofia. Now that is or would be a U.S. military flight potentially. That's a 777-200. But then you've got this. That's Hawaiian, or sorry, no, that's Hillwood. I don't know why I thought that was Hawaiian Airlines. That's Hillwood, 737, headed to Southern California Logistics. We're going to look at that location in a minute. And, of course, iAero is always coming in from Valley. But look at this. If I go to the more section, just notice from Sunday to today, look at all the aircraft that are on here and the little 737s. All right, quite a few. Okay, and then we go over to departures, and same thing. Look at all these aircraft that are leaving on Sunday and into Monday, all 737s. That tells me that the immigrants are here and they're being moved out to this location. As they bring them in, they're rehoming them, probably because you have a boatload of Muslims mixing it up with the Catholics from Central and South America. All right, those two don't mesh. And so you got to keep these guys away because they'll kill each other in these camps. So then you go to Southern California Logistics Airport, and this is, I don't know how recent this is. It says the data attributions. This is almost a year old, okay? So it runs, based on what we're looking at here, from roughly 2010 to 2022. Now, the thing that caught my eye, one, notice this is a desert location, right? It's not green, right? Where are you going to take guys that come from the desert? You're going to put them out in an environment that they can adapt to. Even though it is cold, it does get a little chilly there in their desert too from time to time. But in fact, they get snow in Bethlehem. So you could take these guys and put them out here and they could assimilate pretty quickly. Same thing with Biggs. But again, if you've already got a bunch of guys that came in from the southern side of the house, you want to keep them all separated, so you need, somewhere to put them. Now, again, this is all the way up to 8/24/2022 in terms of the latest data. The thing I want to point out is, one, you've got this runway, very long runway. You can land a lot of big aircraft on there, which would be consistent with logistics stuff. But these are 737s landing out here. And notice we're going to zoom in just a little. And this is what you expect to see at a logistics yard, okay? You're looking for some type of a logistics center. A lot of semi-trucks stacked up, right? You got the loading docks here, and you would expect to see that, okay? Now, you get over to this side. Again, this is a year old. We've seen them. They can build things out very quickly. I mean, within 30 days, you could have a tent city that would hold, 15,000 people easily, okay? Now, this is one that looked like it was being built, and the reason I say that is because if I get a little closer, I notice there are shingles and stuff on the roof. It looks like they were building this out back in 2022. I do see loading docks areas, right, that run here because you see these trucks are backed up. So this looks like it was a secondary logistics center, although I will tell you they can repurpose these things and house people in them because they're air conditioned. All they do is shut all the doors and section things off, and they put everything in there you need. Now, the other piece, too, that I did notice was out here in the dirt side of the house. There seemed to be a lot of AC units, roof units right here stacked up. So those are going to be those are just being staged and implemented. So this area, it looks like it's going to have heating and cooling aspects to it. But you've got a lot of area where they could literally build a giant tent city out here, and you just fly them in and stand it right up. And because it is out kind of in the middle of nowhere, you're probably going to get not a lot of eyes on it either. So if there's anybody that lives out in this general area, I'd love to have you just take a look and tell me what you see. Because my guess, based on all of these flights, these 737s headed out to this location, tells me that they more than likely have a migrant center stood up that is probably holding Middle Easterners in that area. Okay. Very active, very busy, and that's what you don't want to see here in the United States when you see things popping off in other countries. Okay, over to Dover. A couple 747s rolling out. Notice they're coming inbound from JFK and O'Hare. Looks to be leaving to, I'm not going to even try to pronounce that, but I think that's Germany. I think. I may be wrong, but then you got Ramstein, and so two 747s look to be headed to Europe, all right? Yes, I know better than try to sound that out. Okay. All right. Look at this. There it is again. So it looks like they have expanded some efforts there, but arrivals coming in, those Valor 21, 29 C-17s, Atlas Air coming in from Dover, 747, and then IFA. Let's see, that is Franken Air. So that's just, I don't know what that is, CL-60. But, okay, that one's headed over to Seoul, Korea. So it looks like we see some things kind of picking up. This one coming in, 6-7 from Baltimore, Washington. Maybe some troops coming in. I would imagine there are folks getting orders right now to the Middle East that are probably starting to get deployed to the region. And then we get over here. This is going to be RZE Poland. And one thing that I don't see any 747-400s at all. So that tells me that this is kind of an afterthought. I think all eyes right now are focused on the Middle East. If I get over here and look at Ukraine in general, I will tell you from the Ukraine standpoint, the Russians have been popping stuff off. If you go to the very top of that, you'll see there is a new section where artillery has come in. My understanding is that it hasn't gone well for the Russians up there, that they've taken a lot of losses, but just notice that is just north of Kiev, the main capital in Ukraine. So this stuff happening, popping off on the south, north of Crimea, and then all the way up to the north. And it looks like the Russians have not let up at all during this, okay? Yeah, that's just a data point for you. But let's move on. Again, if you go back and you look at what was taking shape over in Ukraine, we know that there was about a 30 to 45 day window. We're almost to the end of that window to where they said there's not going to be any kind of a Ukraine campaign. The Russians they're pretty savvy at fighting in that weather. So it doesn't look like they have let up at all. In fact, it looks like they are making a pretty big push right now. So, okay. This takes us over to the camber flights. These are going to be U.S. Transportation Command. Just notice this one rolling in and out of the Bahrain area and then out of the Malta area. Looks to be the two primaries. So we've got Doha, Shannon, and then this Catania, on the board in terms of where they are departing from. Like I said, it looks like things are heating up very, very quickly. Notice this one, too. This is one of the U.S. Transportation Commands that fell off the board, arrived 40 minutes ago, coming out of Frankfurt, that's HHN, into Saudi, right? So it looks like we are putting some assets here into Saudi. Remember, too, the Saudis are very chummy with the Russians right now. So this is going to be very interesting. This whole box is starting to really, really mix up. Like I said, Syria is just a prime area for this thing to pop off, and the Mediterranean right now, I just don't know how we're going to avoid World War III kicking off here soon. This will be a Festivus miracle if it doesn't. I will say that. And just remember, war is an economy, and as Janet Yellen just made the point this morning, in some type of a press release saying that the U.S. can absolutely afford to go to war. Of course, because war is an economy. It'll stimulate the economy. So, all right, this is going to be your Brits. Just notice you've got them coming out of Alexandria, Louisiana. A little strange. And then Newfoundland, Halifax up in Nova Scotia, and then one popping out, all of them bound to the UK. All right, you can see that on the map. But very interesting to see them all kind of stacking up here in the Northeast. Very, very strange. Why, I must ask. All right. And then here we go. This is going to be Hong Kong to Anchorage. So that's going to be national cargo, and that would probably more than likely be picking up some critical supplies. And then we have the Omni folks rolling out of Portugal, look to be headed back into the United States. And then last up is going to be our immigrant machine. I will tell you this morning there were quite a few flights into the interior of our country, but notice right now they look to be headed southbound into Central and Central America, and then, of course, down into Cuba. So, all right. Well, listen, that's going to do it for our SITREP today. Again, stay very frosty here in the United States, because as things start to progress with everything going on in the Middle East, I think we have an increased level, or at least an increased threat here in the United States of something popping off for sure. And definitely World War III could be on the very near-term horizon, given the fact that this thing in the Middle East just seemed to ignite overnight. All right, so that's it. You guys stay frosty. Keep that powder dry. We'll talk soon. God bless. Monkey out. Thanks for watching, folks. You can check out the latest gear and products by selecting the QR code on your screen now, or go to monkeyworksus.com.